Hello. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. Today's webinar is on how to diagnose and treat Candida. Well, first of all, if you go online and you start researching this subject, you got the medical world that be happy to give you a steroid. So we kind of know their process, give you an immune suppressing drug. Um, or if you go look at alternative, everybody seems to be, kind of repeating the same thing, the Candida diet, which now there are variations of, and we'll cover that. And then treatments, that are mostly herbal in nature, like garlic, oregano oil, coconut oil, etc. Um, and there's a bunch of myths going on this. And of course, there's different types of Candida. We're not going to even refer to it as Candida. There's many different strains, but we're just going to call it yeast or yeast or fungal overgrowth. We're not going to use technical words like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, but this is what we're talking. The thrush, the yeast, the bacteria, pretty much growing anywhere on your body, vaginal, toes, mouth, intestines, etc. On your skin, of course, as well. So, of course, it has to be diagnosed, and that's what the problem is. Sometimes with the skin, there takes some diagnosis because there can be other causes for itchy little skin conditions that look like Candida. But I will say that being in private practice and having patients coming to me and selling antifungal Candida tea online, I can safely say that a lot of people believe they have Candida when they don't. And that's because they come to me and they think all their health problems are Candida, and they've been on the Candida cleanse for a while, and they've been taking their oregano oil and coconut oil and garlic capsules and etc., just like all the YouTube channels say, and they still have it in their minds. I would say 90% of this people from me don't even have Candida because they're looking at the symptoms of gas, bloating, stomach, upset, constipation. They're looking at all these symptoms and they think that it's Candida. And this is very common. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are buying my antifungal Candida tea on eBay and things like that, who really don't have it. But I don't know. But the volume of people that purchase it, I believe that it comes from this belief that, Candida is the cause of all my health problems. I did put disclaimers that you should really know whether you have a yeast overgrowth until you start taking even an herbal antifungal, even though it won't hurt you. So that said, today we're going to talk about the causes. I think a better name of this talk would have probably been the cause of Candida, because that's where I'd really like to focus. And we're going to talk about the Western causes as per Western medicine, but more, which are correct. But in more detail, we're going to talk about the Ayurvedic causes of Candida and yeast overgrowth, which includes the gas, the bloating, the constipation, the abdominal pain, even some symptoms like brain fog. It's just that Ayurveda, in a way, doesn't see it as the yeast overgrowth for the reason for all those symptoms, because there's no signs in Ayurveda. We look at the tongue. It's hard to put it out while I'm talking, but if the tongue has a white film over it, just like the graphic I used for this webinar with the woman with the white covering over her tongue, that's the sign of intestinal yeast overgrowth. So if you have a nice pink tongue, you don't have intestinal yeast overgrowth. Even animals I've seen mostly have pink and clear tongues. But when they do have a coating, they also have this type of fungal overgrowth. But we're going to talk in detail about why Ayurveda says causes it, and then what I do. So, we're going to the Western view, Ayurvedic view, and then what I do. And then we'll talk about the treatments kind of quickly, because the treatment's actually the easiest part, because I believe you can avoid the causes and actually get rid of early stage yeast overgrowth. And you really can't say everybody should get the same treatment, because there's all different degrees of the condition. And a lot of this can be seen from the tongue, looking at the tongue. So, according to Western medicine, and I do believe it's true, that the main causes are weak immunity, which the main cause of weak immunity in Western society is antibiotic use. So that's definitely one of the number one causes of all these yeast overgrowths is antibiotic use. The more you use antibiotics, the more likely you're going to have intestinal yeast overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth elsewhere in your body. And then, of course, second is a high blood sugar. And of course, that makes sense because we know this pathogen survives off of sugar, like many pathogens do. So if you have high blood sugar, you have sugar that's feeding these growths, this pathogen, yeast in this case. So if you've had a lot of antibiotics, plus you had high blood sugar, and you think you have Candida, then you probably, I will believe you more, and then I'll just look at the tongue. But also hormonal imbalances when a woman's pregnant, when she's going through menopause. And of course, one of the other known causes is the birth control pill. And steroids themselves are known to contribute to the cause. Um, Stress, of course, is a factor. Even smoking, wearing damp clothing, not even not drying your hair or not changing your clothes enough, and of course, processed food and processed sugar. And if we can just throw in there for good measure, stress. So when the stress is high, the immunity goes down, and you become more susceptible to all kinds of infection. Now, the Ayurvedic view is a little bit more sophisticated, and most people already realize that birth control pills, steroids, eating a lot of sugar and processed foods is a problem. So most of the time, as they come to me, they've already stopped these things. Now may have had the antibiotics in the past, but they've been taking probiotics sometimes for years before they come to me. And of course, if you can always tell if a person has weak immunity, just ask them how many times they got the cold or flu last winter, and they say 4 or 5 times. How long did it last? 2, 3 weeks. Then you know that's weak immunity. If you're somebody and you ask them how many times you got a cold or flu last year, and they said, oh, I don't know, it's been a long time, maybe 10 years, then that's strong immunity. It's very easy to determine because these flu strains are changing every year, and they're affecting everybody. Everybody's exposed. Even if you're out in the middle of a countryside like me, we're still exposed to these flu strains every year, and it all depends on your immunity. But here's the important part of this whole webinar is the causes according to Ayurveda. Now, I'm just going to read these off straight from Ayurvedic text, pretty much, and then I'll tell you about what I do and my advice to patients, because like I said, most of the patients coming to me have already stopped the sweets, already stopped the processed food, have already been taking probiotics for a long time, and are usually eating tons of garlic. And starving themselves too and losing weight. That's usually how they come to me when they actually do have Candida. But they come to me like that even when they don't have yeast overgrowth because they've been doing it for so long and they're still having all these symptoms of gas, bloating, and they still believe it's yeast overgrowth, but they never got tested. So they've been taking the garlic and the coconut oil and starving themselves really in vain because that wasn't really the cause of their gas and bloating. So what Ayurveda is going to say right here is that these are the causes of gas and bloating and the cause of yeast overgrowth. I mean, in some case, it's the same thing. One is a symptom. It's like the chicken and the egg. The poor digestion creates the environment for the yeast overgrowth, and the yeast overgrowth gives you a lot of digestive symptoms like gas and bloating. So if we look at these, of course, we can get this in the mouth, the throat, the lungs, and the skin. But it's caused by, and I'll just read this here, intake of wrong food combinations like sour curd, like yogurt, and milk together, and seafood and milk. Ayurveda does not like seafood and milk, and it's contributed to skin problems, Candida, and yeast overgrowth. But I'll just continue. Heavy food intake or eating speedily, I guess, eating too quickly and not chewing your food. Excessive food intake, just eating too much. Intake of oily foods, such as and oily and fatty foods, such as junk foods. Um, and eating newly harvested food, which I do, like taking, um, vegetables right out of the ground or carrots and just eating them with the dirt right on it, hoping I'm getting all these good microbes in my organic garden. But I just saw that eating newly harvested food. I assume some food that's newly harvested must have some growth on it. Suppressing the urge to vomit or other urges. So that's suppressing the urge to urinate, suppressing the urge to defecate. And here's one that is, according to Ayurveda, which I think is a major cause: drinking cold water, especially drinking cold water after sun exposure or exercise. So you exercise and you're sweating, then you toss down this cold water, or you're in the hot sun and you're all sweaty and you toss down cold water. This is a known ancient cause of yeast overgrowth, which results in this digestive conditions. Doing physical exercise after eating, so you eat and then you exercise. Um, so those are the main causes. Now, what I do in practice is, of course, I have this knowledge, but we can translate this over into practical things that Westerners do that lead to this yeast overgrowth. Number one, cold foods, cold drinks. Number one in that category is smoothies. Smoothies are a Candida producer because they have all the things that Ayurveda mentioned, poor food combining, because there's more food combining tips than were mentioned there, like just mixing fruits and vegetables together, which people do in smoothies, mixing fruit with grains, like, you know, uh, strawberries on oatmeal, but you're putting strawberries and blueberries in, and you're tossing in, other protein powders and hemp seeds and who knows what, mushroom powder, goji berries, and manuka honey, and they're often very sweet, these smoothies as well. So they're bad food combining, cold, um, and sweet. So they're just perfect for creating the environment for this yeast overgrowth, because and one part of it is the cold. So smoothies are a big issue, and then snacking, just constant grazing throughout the day on nuts, which, of course, if you get online, nuts have all these omega 3s and magnesium and all these benefits, but they fail to mention, because they don't really have a deep understanding of diet like Ayurveda, that, okay, nuts are healthy, but you can't be snacking on them all day long. We're not a cow with a double intestines. We just can't graze. We need this gap in between the meals. So this grazing, whether it's on nuts, chips, crackers, definitely sweets and croissants and donuts, which, is a typical snack. Can you imagine they're like having donuts and sugar in your coffee, in your break time? This is a perfect recipe for yeast overgrowth, with all this flood of sugar, constant sipping on sweets like the coffee. Um, and no mixing fruit with anything. This is a problem. No cold water, like ice cream, ice drinks, these cold coconut yogurt things that people are drinking. Even they're healthy, even they're organic, they're cold. Even they have no dairy, which isn't really necessary to eliminate, but it's cold dairy like yogurt's the worst. So that's what I do, is I simplify the food combining and improve the eating habits, like only eat when you're hungry, don't overeat, don't snack between the meals, wait until you're hungry. These are just basic principles of Ayurveda of having good digestion. No cold foods, no cold drinks. And for many people, I may have even no cold foods, everything warm, cook with warm things, cook with some ginger, some garlic. So I throw in the garlic. But ultimately, when your digestion is strong and you're hungry and the stomach acids are there and you're eating not too much, you're not grazing, your own body has a plenty of defenses against yeast overgrowth. Like the bile itself is like a disinfectant, starting right from the top of the small intestines. So we would never get it if we had good, healthy bile But, when you snack on nuts, you're kind of using up your bile and these digestive capacity. And then when you go to eat, you don't have it. It's not as strong. So, and then the people come back to me who thought they had Candida, but I didn't think they did. I improved their eating habits, got them off the smoothie, got them off of this bad food combining, made them just have 3 meals a day, not fast all day and pig out at the end of the day and overeat and all these habits that they have. And of course, like I said, most people already got rid of the sweets, the sugar, but I let them keep having grains, let them eating normal, particularly if they've already depleted themselves for 1 year of doing the Candida diet. So this is this famous Candida diet, which I humorously call, the starve yourself diet, and that's where you have the no grains. I'm not advocating it. I'm repeating it because if you get on the internet, this is what's popular. Um, no grains, no starches, no fruit, um, and what else is no? I think you got protein left, but remember with protein you have no fiber, and another cause of sometimes these conditions are constipation, which I failed to mention, and we'll talk about that because to treat yeast overgrowth, like a lot of pathogens, you have to have the bowels going like a couple times a day, or you get the die off. And many of us know that you when you have yeast overgrowth, one of the big side effects is this kind of brain fog, and that's the toxins produced by this pathogen. And if your bowels are even slightly constipated, like just sluggish and just barely going one time a day, you're going to get overwhelmed with these toxins, especially when you start taking the antifungal products that start killing it. So, and then if your bowels aren't moving, you're in big trouble. I mean, you may get rid of the Candida, but you're going to have just waves of brain fog and even fatigue and nausea and other symptoms. So you really don't need an extreme diet. What you need is the herbs that are anti fungal in nature. And I'm just showing you what I do and what the products I use. This is a type of condition most people could treat at home. I know when I do kidney failure and complex conditions, I always say, don't try this at home. You really need to, get professional help or do an appointment with me. But in this case, you should be fine on your own. You can go online and find antifungals like garlic capsules, oregano oil, berberine, coconut oil. Not to say that everybody can do those because those are very hot. And a person like me, if I took garlic capsules, I would get heartburn. So we can't say every treatment is suitable for everybody. And in Ayurveda, we treat people individually. So if I had yeast overgrowth, I wouldn't be giving myself oregano or garlic capsules because they're very hot. I'm already a warm, hot, pitta guy, and I can get heartburn easily. And that will give me heartburn, which many people discovered by popping oregano oil capsules. So let's just go look at the herbs that you could use. And this is the tea that I sell a lot on Hermantes, hermantes.com, our sponsor. I'm drinking brain tea, by the way. But here you got a nice list of antifungal herbs. Um, I have to admit, it's a little bit of a kitchen sink approach to herbalism where you just get a bunch of things that do one job and throw it in together. I mean, the licorice is just kind of there to wind things up. Rosemary's really circulatory. But after that, you see the heavy hitters in antifungal, calendula, Oregon grapefruit, Paul de Arco, and even the little boys, the oregano leaf and the thyme leaf. These aren't, as powerful as say Paul de Arco and Oregon grape, but hey, like in Chinese herbalism, calendula would be the king, lemongrass would be the queen, and Paul de Arco, oregano would be like the bishops, very powerful. And then these little oregano and thyme would be the rooks, and all the small ones are just little pawns. It's the way they see it. It's like a strategy. You don't want everything to be really strong in the formula. And then you want things that just kind of are supportive, like the rosemary, the licorice, and even the white oak to some degree. but it's also astringent. But and you need an astringent taste here, and this can be used externally, even on the skin, as mouthwash, and also can be used internally for women as a douche. But most people just drink the tea for yeast overgrowth. And this is really the easiest way to get rid of your yeast overgrowth is stop the snacking. Okay, for 1 week, I always say, let's just try to get rid of this thing in a week, not drag it out for a year. Because most of my patients, when I do see their tongue and I go, oh, yeah, you got yeast overgrowth. Well, they've been trying to get rid of it for a year, and some of them don't even know to look at your tongue, and they even have it. But I say, just stop the fruit and between the meals, and just drink this tea between the meals. Um, and even first thing in the morning, just have like 3 cups a day, morning before breakfast, and one after in between lunch and dinner, and then and then between breakfast and lunch. So 3 times a day you're drinking this, particularly first thing in the morning. And it doesn't taste bad. It's kind of bland. Lemongrass adds some flavor to it. And those are the two big, but it's not strong. It's not hot. There's not that much oregano and thyme in it that's going to upset, somebody who's sensitive, like a child, or somebody like myself who gets heartburn easy. So that always has to be a consideration when you make a formula. You don't just want to make it so strong. You're thinking, okay, let's just put garlic, oregano oil, and thyme in it, and nothing else. It just could be so hot, and cloves. It could be so hot that for many people it will be just too much. And so that's why we have herbs that are more balancing here with this strong more heating herbs like oregano and thyme. So that's very, very effective. And mostly I say drink it between meals. And if the case is um, a serious case, I also give antifungal capsules. We don't sell these online. There they are, antifungal capsules. And those are Ayurvedic. We import these from India, and they're made from neem, but not just the normal neem powder, which we have kilos of, in a lot of products. And we have other products that have neem in it, so you can take them with the food. But these capsules are a little special neem. It's the neem root, the neem leaf, which is what's traditionally used as a leaf, and the bark. So it's the bark, the root, and the leaf all mixed together. And apparently, this makes a really good antifungal. And that's what I would give the patient who for sure had a yeast overgrowth that I could see on the tongue. Even if it's vaginal, I can still see, the yeast in the tongue or the mouth, or there's other signs of it. And so I'll give this and that tea. And then you take 2 of these with every meal. It's like you're dropping this poison pill inside of your own food that doesn't kill you, but it's poison to a lot of pathogens. And in Ayurveda, we don't have really care what strain it is. It's not necessary. These are broad spectrum herbs in treating a broad spectrum. Now, we do have some other products that I could include, but that would be the main treatment. And those herbs are quite accessible on your own. After them, there's a skin allergy formula, and this is more if it's on the skin, and there we can see, you know, different herbs that there's the neem in there, see? So just that neem alone, and there's Guduchi and Nantamul, soothing for the skin, Haridakandis, made from turmeric, and this would also be effective, particularly if they had skin allergy. And now, if they had a strong case where they brought me blood work, and I could see they had other pathogens, maybe some other, they've had a history of shingles or herpes, or even they've had a fever, or they've had some type of they have a respiratory infection plus candida, which is quite common because the people, they take a lot of steroids and antibiotics, and the weak immune system crashes, and then they come to me and they've got 3 or 4 infections. So then I would provide this formula here, which is like a broad spectrum, um, you know, antibiotic, really, but also works very good with viruses, unlike antibiotics that only work for antibiotics. And also, I provide a sulfur. We call it Gandak Rasiana, and Gandak is sulfur, and Rasiana means restorative. But sulfur is used as a natural antibiotic, and we have it both in capsule and in like a jam form. But Again, we don't sell those online on Herb Teas, but I would give them out based on the case. If it was a severe case, I may give like 3 products plus this tea for sure. Then if there's signs on the skin, I'll throw in that. Then if they've got other infections, I'll throw in that. And if their immunity is clearly low, I'll even start working on their immunity to get this white blood cell count up and start supporting their whole immune system if that really seems like the underlining cause. And there's a lot of itching on the skin. I have a bath powders, which I use for dry, itchy, which really gives immediate relief. But and there's many other herbs. When I type fungal in my system, you can see we have biofilm destroyer, and we have other immune fighting antiviral products here as well. Even my allergy tea has helped a lot of people with itchy skin and other types of bacterial conditions on the body that are like an allergy. Um, and you can have some people can have an allergy and they think it's Candida and vice versa. So if it's on the skin, it has to be really diagnosed. But there's your quick and short there. Make sure you really have it first, and then don't starve yourself. Just, get your diet under control without the snacking and the sugar and the sweets. And then take the herbs in a tea form between the meals and maybe some neem, with each meal or any type of antiviral, maybe even those oregano oil. You could just take 1 oregano oil with each meal or, a couple capsules of garlic powder with each meal, and then drink a tea of calendula and lemongrass, and you get rid of it in 1 week. Don't drag it on. And that's unfortunately what most people do because they don't know how to treat it. And I had to learn how to treat them with bigger doses and multiple products because people are coming to me, they're paying me the money. They've already tried themselves for 1 or 2 years. So, the pressure's on me. I'm like, but most of the time they didn't remove the cause. And that's your main lesson from this webinar is if you don't remove the cause of drinking the cold foods, it's not just the sweets, but the snacking on the crackers, the nuts, smoothies, fruit in oatmeal, fruit in yogurt, another really bad food combining. So I think bad food combining, particularly when it's cold and involving fruit, is probably the number one cause, as per the Ayurveda description, which I read you earlier. That, of course, if you've been taking antibiotics, you're more susceptible. You've been taking steroids, you're more susceptible. If you have high blood sugar, you're more susceptible. But I wouldn't say those are always the causes. The causes are more eating habits. And of course, most people originally were starting off eating sweets too, and then they stopped the sweets when they got the yeast overgrowth. But that doesn't make it all go away, particularly if they were eating sweets plus taking antibiotics. Then you got the perfect scenario, and drinking some cold water and cold smoothies every day. That's how you get yeast overgrowth. Treating it is the easy part if you've really gotten rid of these habits. But in my case, some people, they don't even have yeast overgrowth or Candida. They thought they did, but I determined they don't. But I change all these eating habits, the same ones I give for a yeast overgrowth, because the digestion has to be strong. If the digestion is weak, that's creating the environment of these pathogens to survive. And that's why cold is so unhealthy, because it really hurts your digestive capacity. So a lot of people, I'd say 9 out of 10 people who think they have yeast overgrowth don't. And then I change their diet, of course, as an Ayurvedic doctor. If they're Vata Prakriti, I'll give them a Vata diet. Pitta people, I'll give them Pitta diet. Kapha, I'll give Kapha diet. So we don't give anybody the same diet. But once we change the diet, and more importantly, these eating habits that I told you about, then that's it. The gas and bloating and the constipation goes away. And I did mention that you have to, when you're doing this, you have to take herbs almost in every case for the bowels. Even if you're already having 1 or 2 bowel movements a day while you're doing this treatment, you might as well take a colon tea or a colon formula at the same time, even if you don't need a strong dose. And while you're doing the antifungals all day long, at nighttime, you take some colon herbs. So the next day you really clear out all the dead pathogens and that are toxic, yeah, out of your body as quickly as possible. So I almost all cases I'll give a couple products like we did here, and maybe something even for the digestion to make it stronger because it's like the cause of the gas and bloating in the first place. For most cases, it was the bad eating habits, thus the poor and weak digestion, which gave them the candida-like symptoms, which is why they treated something for a year they didn't really have. And when it was all the whole time, it was their own eating habits. So sometimes I have to give them digestive aids with it, which we didn't talk about today, and a colon formula. So imagine you come to me, I change your diet, I change your eating habits, I give you antifungal tea, I give you antifungal capsules, I give you some herbs for digestion, and I give you some colon herbs. So I giving you minimum 4 things. And if you can't sleep, I'll give you something to sleep too. So you're not just having oregano oil, you're having 4 different products. And sleep's important too because you need to get the immunity back up. And maybe fifth product would be an immune formula. So I'm giving you like 5 products, making sure the bowels are moving, discussing the diet with you, giving 2 antifungals, one between meals and tea, and one to take orally with food. So, that's why my success rate is so high. As long as the patient is compliant and does the tricky little program for a week, it's over and done. So if you do it right, you can get it over and done and not even starve yourself. And you can go back to eating fruit and other things as soon as you replenish the healthy bacteria. And of course, the whole time you have to be taking the probiotics. Okay, well, I hope that helped you understand the causes of yeast overgrowth, and of course, how to treat it. I hope that added clarity, and feel free to contact me or my office if you need assistance in treating any health condition at my website, kabirsclinic.com. Or if you want to purchase any of my products, go to herbmanteas.com. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you all the best of health.